You're a sick, twisted person. You're a bad man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hello! I think for once I really don't need to do much of an introduction, as the title is pretty self-explanatory. Originally, I was going to do one fact for every TV episode, and I did do that, but I ended up with so much material that I decided to go further and just list off every single fact I could find. We'll be going in order and listing off hidden details, Easter eggs, production notes that I found interesting, deleted or altered scenes, and whatever else I found notable. Let's start with Episode 1A, The Wrong Side of the Tracks. The idea of the theme park being Lumpy themed was never originally intended by the writers, and was added later by storyboard artist Ted Pratt. The boards also introduced several gags not originally in the script, like the picture frame, as well as a deleted scene of Nutty cheering at Handy winning the ring toss game, before promptly dying seconds later. 1B, From Hero to Eternity. The scene of Sniffles and Nutty getting thrown around in the treehouse was based on a video of a school bus overturning, where you could see the kids inside being flung around in a similar fashion, though it's not been specified where this supposed video actually comes from. This is also the only episode of the entire series to ever have the DVD commentary officially released online, which was provided to and available on the Cold Hard Flash blog, alongside an interview. The Italian version of the Winter Break DVD has this episode and Easy for You to Slay as bonus features, with this episode actually having some noticeable differences from the final, and it's seemingly an early version of the episode. It has different audio mixing, adjusted effects, and a differently formatted moral. The full list of changes is in a video that I will link in the description. It's pretty neat. 1C, And the Kitchen Sink. Despite being the third episode in release order, this episode was one of, if not the first in the season to be animated, which explains why it uses several mouth assets from Season 2. This episode also seemingly had a very rough production cycle, as the first pass was not only colored strangely to the point that Mondo had to revise it a bit in-house, but the first animatic they received was actually too short, and the scene with the waterfall onwards had to be hastily written into the script to make the episode meet the required length of 7 minutes. The scene of Cub in the hot water is based on an official comic where a similar scenario happens, just with a different ending. This is also not the only episode to be based on a comic partially. 2A, Party Animal. This episode was written and aired in the 2000s, which means that the song Happy Birthday couldn't be used without paying royalties, as the song didn't become public domain until 2016. Instead, they used the song For He's a Jolly Good Fellow. Towards the end of the episode, you can see that one of Flaky's quills ended up actually pinning the tail on the donkey in the correct spot. 2B, Ipso Fatso. The disco music heard at the start of the episode was later reused for the official Flash game Disco Inferno, also briefly available to download via the website of composer Jerome Rawson. In the scene with Flaky and Crow Marmot, you can see the background cut off in the upper left corner, revealing the blank white Adobe Flash canvas underneath. 2C, Don't Yank My Chain. This episode was originally supposed to star Handy, Mole, and Mime, but Mime was cut due to him not really having any reason to be there in terms of the story. The boards for this episode actually have Mole doing several expressions that are not present in the final at all, likely due to the limited budget the series had restricting them in terms of expressions. 3A, Doggone It. This episode, and some scenes from it, are based on the official comic Puppy Love, which is shown most clearly in the scene with Giggles. The dog seen in this episode is directly based on and named after Ken Pontiac's real dog, Whistle. Not only was this particular scene based on a real event involving Whistle, in the episode, he's actually voiced by the real dog, who they, quote, took into the booth and made growl, which isn't hard to do. Other sounds of Whistle growling can also be heard in the episode Idle Curiosity for the carnivorous plants. The storyboard artist Lila Warren actually posted the animatic for this episode on Vimeo, and you can still watch it to this day. In fact, it's actually the only TV series animatic to be released. 3B, Concrete Solution. This shot from the opening was used as a banner image on the official online merch store for a while. In the storyboards, the title was pluralized as Concrete Solutions, and there's an altered scene at the end, where the concrete stomach was supposed to come alive and turn to look at the bag of sugar. 3C, See What I Found. This episode was originally meant to be 3 minutes long for the internet series, until the notes were lost and the episode was abandoned. Pop and Cub look through some mechanical binoculars, which look a bit like a smiley face. When the binoculars are destroyed by Lifty and Shifty, it can visibly be seen frowning after being destroyed. Also, this episode is technically one of the first in the season to be released, as it was given to IGN as a preview. You can actually still watch the IGN version on their website to this day, but from what I can tell, it's completely unchanged from any other version, so I really don't know why you'd want to do that. 4A. Easy for you to slay. Okay, so I was trying to find something interesting to say about this episode, so I checked the storyboards. And while they are charming, don't get me wrong, they're done by Lippy, the voice of Nutty. I couldn't find anything super specific that was noteworthy except for one thing. On the NTSC version of the TV Volume 2 DVD, where these boards are present, they're in reverse for some reason. I don't have all the different versions of this DVD, but on all the other ones that I checked, the boards are in the proper order. 4B. Wishy Washy. This is the only episode of the TV season not officially available to watch in full on YouTube. This is due to the ending violating YouTube's community guidelines, leading to the episode and its accompanying episodes, 4 on the Floor, being unavailable officially on YouTube. The episode can still be watched via unofficial re-uploads, the Mondo Media website, or the several DVD releases. A video of the ending being shown off at Comic-Con 2006 can be found on Ken Pontak's YouTube channel, and was seemingly posted on the official website, though that file is lost. 4C. Who's to Flame? The start of this episode is based on a real thing that happened to writer Ken Pontak, or more specifically, his mother when he was a small child. Just like Petunia, she took a call, leaned a bit too far back on the stove, and her nightgown set on fire. Thankfully, the fire was put out quickly, and she was okay. Petunia, though, she's not as lucky. 5A. Every Litter Bit Hurts. If you look at the first scene of Lumpy dumping trash into the lake, you'll see many reused assets from other episodes. There's the Lumpy plush, the kitchen sink, and lots of assets from Wishy Washy like the plunger, the boiler, the toilet, the mouthwash, and of course, the idol. This isn't the only time assets were reused like this, but it is one of the most obvious. 5B. As You Wish. The characters of Happy Tree Friends never actually speak real words, but they do speak in their own gibberish language to each other. A few characters like Mime and the Mole are mute and don't say anything of any kind, but Nutty is unique as he appears quite frequently, but his vocalizations are almost all laughing or screaming. In this episode, we actually get to hear what he sounds like when he talks, so to speak. Couldn't have said it any better myself. 5C. Take a Hike. This is the only TV episode to receive a blurb, as was voted upon in a poll hosted on the original show website. For a large portion of the episode's runtime, Sniffles' mouth is underneath his snout, and by the time the crew realized this, it was already way too late to actually fix. The episode was also downloadable in its entirety on composer Jerome Rosson's website as an example of his work on the show, though from archives of the file, it seems to be identical to the final episode. 6A. Snow Place to Go. In the scene where Cuddles first sees the fish, his ear is very clearly in front of his hair tuft. It's not like a one-frame error like some others, it's on screen for a good few seconds. I really don't know how they missed this. 6B. Dunce Upon a Time. This episode has a rare instance of the TV season showing characters in their pre-TV designs. When Giggles launches herself up to the shelf, right before impact, you can actually see the characters in the jars using their original designs. This isn't the only instance of the characters reusing old poses, but it's still very uncommon, and this is one of the stranger times that it happened. 6C. Gems the Breaks. You'd never know this just watching the episode, but that green acorn is officially called the Kryptonut. Very clever. Despite this being the 18th episode of the season, and not their first appearance in it, Lifty and Shifty have the classic Pac-Man pupils in this episode instead of the circular pupils they were supposed to have at this point. This is likely due to it being one of the first TV episodes to be written, which means that it could be one of the first to be animated, and the redesigns of the twins weren't fully finalized. This is further supported by the idol having a rougher design without any outlines. In every other episode, it has the outlines, so this is likely just an early design. 7A. A Change of Heart. The lines on the heart monitor had to be added in post by Mondo themselves, as they forgot to have them in the episode from the start. This is also the only TV episode to have its music fully ripped cleanly, and it's in the description if you're interested. 7B, A Whole Lotta Love. For this episode, Warren Graff wasn't available to record lines for Handy, and thus temporary lines recorded by Ken Navarro using his Cuddles voice were used instead. This isn't the first time Ken has had to fill in for Warren, as in the episode Keepin' It Real, Toothy, who's usually voiced by Warren, had to be voiced by Ken. 7C, Mime to 5. For some reason, this episode seems to get special treatment. Almost all of its music has been officially released, which is incredibly rare. It had 2 official games based on it, though to be fair, they were both reskins, one of which was for a Ren and Stimpy game of all things. Cuddles, in his Daredevil outfit, was part of the Minifigure World line, which is pretty crazy when you consider that merch isn't often based on specific episodes like this, and they used a slot for this figure when the same set omitted major characters like Lumpy, Mole, Sniffles, and Disco Bear. I guess they just really liked this episode. 8A, Blast from the Past. During the scene where Toothy is going down the slide in reverse, for a few frames, you can see text in the top right corner that says, "Track Toothy with camera." This is a production note that was accidentally left in the episode, and was likely missed due to it only being on screen for a couple of frames. 8B, Chew Said a Mouthful. When Nutty goes to the candy store, we don't actually see what it looks like from the outside. In the storyboards, there's a scrapped exterior shot of the candy store, where we can see it was originally intended to be made out of candy. In the scene where Lumpy makes apple juice, his face dislocates to the top of his head for a few frames. Again, I have no idea how they missed this. 8C, See What Develops. This episode seemingly has a placeholder shot that was left in the final version. In the scene where Splendid zooms by the supermarket, if you pause just as he passes by, you can see that he uses an asset from the Season 2 episode Better Off Bread. The reason I believe this was a placeholder is because Splendid is missing a hand, due to the original shot showing him holding Giggles, which was removed, and this likely would have been changed for a new asset if it was noticed. 9A, Idle Curiosity. The chase scene had its music released by composer Jerome Rawson on his SoundCloud page, creatively titled The Chase. Sadly, these uploads are no longer available, but they can still be enjoyed via re-uploads. 9B, Home is Where the Herd Is. The house featured in this episode is actually based on a real house in San Francisco, being the Winchester Mystery House. It's a well-known tourist attraction that was built by the wife of the inventor of Winchester firearms. It's not fully known why the house was built, but it is still around, and you can visit it. 9C, Aw Shucks. According to the storyboards, this shot of Mime, Sniffles, and Nutty at the fair is based on See No Evil, Hear No Evil, Speak No Evil imagery. The boards also show the original name for the episode, which was From Husk to Dawn. This is also the only episode in the entire TV series to have some of its screenplay released. In an official blog, the first few pages were shown off, but sadly, no other pages from any other episode have ever been released. 10A, A Sight for Sore Eyes. This episode's partially based on an official comic, with the difference being that Giggles isn't present in the episode at all, and the plane in the episode is a mechanical one, and not paper. Apparently, this specific injury is one the crew wanted to do for a very long time, and like a lot of TV season episodes, this was their chance to finally do it. 10B, Wipeout. A big reason why this episode exists at all is simply because the studio Ghostbot made title cards for every single character, and they didn't want to not use the one for Chrome Armit. If you look at the boards for the scene with Cuddles, you'll notice that Cuddles was originally supposed to be Toothy, but was replaced in the final animation. 10C, Better Late Than Never. Giggles' death in this episode is again based on a comic, though it does play out a little bit differently, with the comic having the sweater get wet in the rain, and the episode having the sweater be splashed with mud. I've also heard rumors that Giggles in specifically this episode is voiced by Nika Lorber, as opposed to Giggles' voice at the time, Ellen Connell. Though I was unable to find an actual source for this, so keep in mind it may not be true. 11A, Wingin' It. This episode was seemingly renamed at the last possible second. In the storyboards, as well as the DVD menu to access those storyboards, the episode is referred to as Sky's the Limit, and even the credits use this name. 11B, Tongue in Cheek. Due to the incredibly drawn-out, torturous nature of this episode, it's often viewed as one of the series' most disliked episodes, as it goes too far for most people, maiming a sympathetic character like Sniffles for minutes on end. There's a common rumor that the crew actually agrees with this notion, agreeing that they went too far, and that's why the ants never appeared in the series again. This, however, isn't true at all. Despite this being a commonly stated piece of trivia, the crew never said this, and in fact, they've actually said many times that they don't think they've ever gone too far in terms of violence, and they strive to make the show have as many cringy moments as possible, seeing how far they can push it. The only cited instance of the crew being a bit iffy on a scene is this part of A to Zoo, with Ken Navarro finding it a bit off-putting to kill hundreds of non-sapient creatures. 11C, Easy Comb, Easy Go. In the official show panel at AOD, Ken Pontac explained that he actually got the idea for this episode's big finish in a dream. He dreamt of a single hair on his iris, and once he woke up, he immediately rushed to write it down, knowing that it would make a great moment for the show. Considering that moment alone makes several people not want to watch the episode at all, I'd say it's pretty safe to say that he was absolutely right. 12A, I've Got You Under My Skin. This is the only episode to have only one featuring card. Yeah, that's not the most interesting fact, but I really couldn't find much for this one. 12B, In a Jam. This is the only episode to use live instruments as opposed to virtual ones, and the only episode in the TV season where Jerome Rawson was not the only composer. The main rock theme used in the episode had live drums provided by Brian Carmody and live guitar by Ross Grant, who were both friends of Jerome. 12C, Junk in the Trunk. In the sped-up montage where Lifty and Shifty rebuild their van, you can actually see Cuddle's body decomposing as time passes. 13A, Here Today, Gone Tomorrow. This is yet another episode to be partially based on an official comic, even down to the name. The opening of the episode is very similar to the comic, albeit with Giggles instead of Lumpy. This comic also inspired an official piece of stock art, which featured Cuddles and Giggles without Lumpy at all. 13B, Double Whammy. In the boards, as well as archives of the G4 website, the episode and its second part are referred to with the name Head to Head, though of course it was changed later on. 13C, Autopsy Turvy. There are 3 reasons for the opening fakeout. The first, and simplest one, is just that it was funny, and something they had never done before. Secondly, the TV season had a starring role for every single character except for Toothy, so this was a chance to show off his title card. And finally, the crew loved the name Autopsy Turvy, but couldn't find an episode it would actually fit with, so they made this fakeout to actually use it. And there you have it, all 39 episodes and over 50 facts. There's not much to really conclude here, so it's really just the usual spiel. If there's something I missed or something you want to see, leave a comment and let me know. I have channel memberships if you want to support me, and I plan to get videos out more often in the future. With all that said, see you next time.